Because it's bigger number than I expected.
All right, it's 6 o'clock, so we will welcome everybody to our first meeting of March. Please join us by the invocation followed by the salute to the flag. The invocation will be delivered by Mr. Jansen, please.
Let us pray. Good and gracious Heavenly Father, we love you because you first loved us. Lord, we just ask you to guide us through our principles as we govern this great city. Lord, we just ask you to look out upon our first responders and our military. Lord, we just ask you to be with the families of those who are suffering from COVID and have other ailments in their lives and ones that have lost other loved ones. Lord, we just thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ. For it's in his name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is called to order. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call? Councilmember DeMont? Here. Golding? Here. Jansen?
Here.
Mejia?
Here.
Nichols?
Here.
Stokes?
Here.
Mayor Hoffman? Here. Item 031, please.
I move that we approve the minutes from the City Council briefing held on February 8, 2021.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 032.
I move that we approve the minutes from the City Council executive session held on February 16, 2021.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 033.
I move that we approve the minutes from the regular City Council meeting held on February 16, 2021.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Announcements. I wanted to start off by just publicly thanking everyone who took part in our strategic planning session on Saturday. We had almost 7 really great hours of a SWOT analysis, not like a SWAT team, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, as well as discussion of our visioning and mission. And we should have put money down on if we thought we were going to come out with a draft of either or both of those, but we do have a draft of both. And I know I left that event very energized, and I hope that you guys all did too. So I wanted to thank my colleagues up here. Everybody participated wholeheartedly, and it was really great to see how much we had in common in terms of our future vision for Jacksonville Beach. And then, in case you missed it, March 12th starts the paid parking program back up at the beaches, so just be aware of that. Ms. Golding?
Thank you, Mayor, and I agree. Our strategic planning session was a really good session, and so I really enjoyed participating in it. I want to just announce that Beaches Watch has their monthly meeting on Wednesday the 3rd at 7 o'clock. It's a virtual meeting via Zoom, and the topic is our schools in COVID, where we are and where are we going, and it will have a panel of the school board Representative Elizabeth Anderson for the beaches, 3 of the beaches principals, so 1 from the high school, 1 from the middle school, and 1 from elementary school, a teacher and a student to get information and perspective on the past year with COVID and how that's impacted each of those people, whether it's the school board president or school board representative or the principals or the student or the teacher, and then talk about what's up next and opportunities for any of the attendees to ask questions. So it should be a very informational session. If anybody would like to join the meeting, you can go to beacheswatch.com and the Zoom link will be under the events. Thank you. Oh, and one quick reminder, tomorrow the legislative session starts. So we'll have 60 days of craziness with lots of bills that we're going to need to stay on top of. So I encourage anybody who can to please go to FloraLeagueOfCities.com and check all the information they put there. There's a lot of really good information to keep us up to date on the bills that would impact our cities.
Thank you, Ms. Golding. Mr. Mason?
I also left pretty energized on Saturday afternoon.
I've been looking forward to it. I know I've mentioned to our city manager, Mike Stepopoulos, I think it was really neat, jotting down some ideas. I look forward to working with everyone and staff and the councilors and the mayor, and I have a positive future outlook and ready for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. Mr. Stokes?
Quickly reiterate what everyone so far has said about Saturday. It was a great day. We got a lot accomplished. My mind has not hurt that much in a very long time after that day, but that just shows that that we really went in and really gave it all that we had. And real quick on the paid parking program, just wanted to touch on that. If you're already registered, you do not need to re-register. But new this year, there is a pilot program that if you are a resident of Jacksonville Beach, but your vehicle is not registered in the city, you can go to the police station, show proof of residency, Beach's energy bills, driver's license, and get on the free parking that is afforded to residents. That is new this year, so I did want to highlight that, and hopefully we have some citizens take advantage of it.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes. Moving on to courtesy of the Florida visitors, I do not have any cards. I'm sorry, Mr. Stepopoulos.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had two quick announcements for council. The first is coming out of the visioning and missions session that we had this past Saturday. We are placing an item on next Monday's council briefing for council to review the two drafts that were put together at Saturday's exercise to see if there's any final changes that council has recommendations on. We'll also be getting some input from the executive leadership team tomorrow, specifically on the mission statement, since that affects the organization itself, and we'll see if there are any recommendations from the ELT for council as well. Following that briefing, if it's council's desire, we can ultimately move the item to come back at a formal meeting for adoption if council so chooses. The second thing is to let council know that we've been contacted by the city of Jacksonville, and we're currently in discussions with talking about a possible vaccination site in the city of Jacks Beach. We are currently working through some of the logistics that would be associated with that, since this is effectively being pushed from the state level through the city of Jacksonville EOC. So we need to evaluate what the impacts would be to our resources before we know whether or not we could commit to a location. Specifically, that would be impact to our recreational programming and also commitment of police officers to help staff the facility 7 days a week. So once we've made that determination, we'll bring it back to council for further discussion.
Just to clarify, you mentioned from the state level through the EOC, but this one is actually from the federal level.
Correct. It's pushed down all the way through. Yes.
Thank you. So hopefully we'll get some progress there. Anything else, Mr. Stepopoulos? Okay. We'll move on to item 034 and turn to Mr. Ambrosio for a briefing on this item.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request for legal services agreement to be approved by council. It's a legal services agreement with Bell & Roper, and specifically for me to be able to work with and retain and hire Sherry Sutphin, who is an extremely accomplished expert in local government law, eminent domain, land use law, representing code enforcement departments and handling purchasing and contracts, procurement, and specializing in working with planning and development departments. She's the city attorney, I believe, for two smaller cities in Central Florida, has many, many years of experience. Just to remind council, legal services, professional legal services are exempt from the competitive process. So that's why we were able to hire a new magistrate, Cliff Shepard to help us with charter review, just two examples. So I would intend on using Sherry predominantly for the planning and development department, as Heather and I have been, soon to be new director Heather Ireland and I have been kind of planning for her new position and what her needs are, and experiencing the past 18 months or so planning and development legal needs. And of course my workload, Sherry would be a very valuable asset to us, and Ashley and I have already used her for 2 weeks. So Sherry's great. And we use Bell & Roper for many other items and matters and cases, defense counsel on litigation, have a long history working with them. really need them. They're a great firm. In the memo background, the manager and I have explained that the city manager's purchasing threshold is currently $25,000. I don't anticipate going over that during the term of the agreement or on any one singular project. But of course, if we're coming anywhere close to that cumulative cost, we'll come back to council and ask for approval. The billing account is going to remain under my department. So all legal fees and charges, for the most part, other than the CRA, are still being billed in my department, although Sherry's work will predominantly be for other city departments. We'll work that out with finance and reevaluate that in the future. But thank you very much. So I'm just requesting approval of the professional legal services agreement with Bell and Roper and Sherry Sefrin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambrosio. Can we have a motion?
I move that we approve the legal services agreement with Bell and Roper, PA.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilmember Dumont,
Yes.
Golding,
Yes.
Jansen,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes, motion carries. The next item, 035, is their staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is seeking approval from City Council for a task assignment to Dix Height, who is a consultant working for Public Works and the CRA, to do a final design and bidding services for downtown bike parking and site furnishings. This exceeds the purchasing threshold of $25,000, which is why it's coming back to council for formal approval. As you can tell from the agenda memo, the item on this is actually seeking to make improvements throughout the downtown CRA, everything from benches to bike racks to bollards and some additional appurtenances. We also have Cale Moore from our Public Works Department here representing this item.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. This item is, several months ago, the planning director, CRA administrator, reached out to Public Works to look for assistance in implementing and constructing portions of some downtown improvements that Dix Height had gone through a lengthy process of designing and vetting, selecting out different items for site furnishings, and particularly bike parking was the main issue that he came to us with, and then later we included site furnishings. And we considered whether or not we could construct that piecemeal with vendors and contractors and some in-house work. And we decided at Public Works the best way to move forward with that was to go back to the engineering design architect firm and have them make sure those plans were finalized and prepared in bid packages with specifications like we typically do with our infrastructure projects. And then we could bid that out, competitive bid, and get the appropriate contractor to do that work that would be approved by the folks who designed the work. So that's what this request seeks to do, is to ask for approval to move forward on that task assignment specifically for site furnishings and bike parking in areas of the downtown. One caveat is the bike parking they had originally designed for the pier entry area. That has been pulled out of this because of the improvements to the pier. That is in a subsequent design that's currently being worked on with Dix Height, so that will not be part of this. So that's what we would like to do, have them move forward. What we will be doing is they're going to combine those two into a single package, and it's been a while since Dix Height has visited all of these designs, so we are going to have some site visits downtown and freshen some of that up. We have also, this has been communicated to the CRA, and appropriations been approved by them, and they are also taking an interest in looking at the plans to make sure they are remember what was in it. It was a while ago. The final plans were approved October of 2019, so they're going to look at that and see if there's some opportunity to, freshen some things up, shake some dust off of it, not break it apart, put it back together, but just look at it and make sure it's we're constructing something that everyone wants.
Thank you. Can we have a motion?
I move that we approve task assignment to Dix Height for final design and bidding services for downtown bike parking and site furnishings in the amount of $30,800. That is $28,000 base fee plus $3,800 contingency.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Mr. Stokes?
Are there any site furnishings or anything? Are they going to do any sidewalk improvements around the bike racks? I noticed when I was down there this weekend, that some of the sidewalks around the bike racks was either not concrete and it's just on dirt, or some broken sidewalks.
This project is specifically for the site furnishings and any concrete areas supporting the site furnishings and bike racks and any new pads or concrete areas supporting the bike racks. I do know that we have a current project ongoing right now that's working on replacing some of that concrete that's damaged. I can get you more details later on that. I don't know exactly which areas we're doing. I know there's an extensive list that the Public Works Director and our streets and stormwater folks have been coordinating with the CRA, so hopefully it's addressing the areas you're concerned with. Excellent, thank you.
Ms. Dumont?
Thank you. I think this is a great thing, and we're finally approving the money for the CRA to start to get to work to finalize the designs for at least in this case, the bike parking and the seating in the downtown area. It's been a long time coming. We've been waiting, so once this gets approved, you can go back to CRA and they can get to work. Thank you.
I'm going to jump in really quick. For the new council members who might not be aware of the background, you've probably been hearing Dick's Height a lot, and you're welcome to borrow this if you ever want to look through it. This book was the result of a lot of workshops and council workshops and public workshops where we got to put our 2 cents in on seating and the look and the feel of downtown. So Dick's Height gave us some conceptual things here. And kind of in theory of here's what we would do if it were up to us based on the feedback that they got from us and the citizens. I know that we were sent an email today and asked not to comment specifically on colors and locations and shapes and sizes. And if you know me, you know I've been sitting up here for 8 years harping on not only bike racks but also public art. So I'm going to take the opportunity to harp again on the record that the plans that we got this afternoon look like we're going with ring bike racks, which is okay, except for that we have the opportunity to inject a little bit of character, and we can easily inject character. They don't have to be octopus and jellyfish, but we could do shark fins just as easily as we could do ring bike racks. I went back and I watched the CRA meeting, and I feel like the CRA members left thinking that they were again going to get to talk about what the bike racks looked like. So the memo that we got today said that's up to the CRA. In watching the CRA meeting, it didn't really sound like that was. So where are we on ring bike racks?
I did reach out to a representative from the architectural firm from Dick's Height, and he's of the mindset that he wants to make sure that these are the designs, the plans are freshened up. They haven't been touched in a while. Once again, our intent is not to completely go through this planning and design and vetting process again, unless that.
Well, we haven't gone through it the first time, though, is what I'm saying. There's a lot of reference to again, but this is all we've seen, and we actually never voted on approving it. So what's this again?
That was not communicated to me.
Okay.
What was communicated to me was a plan of improvements that was ready to be implemented. And that's how we've been moving forward. I know we do intend to go back through some of the details, the specifications, as far as the bike racks and maybe some of the other amenities that were selected during that process, and see if there are alternatives that can be selected or put in as alternatives. Something, it may just be a set of alternatives that then we decide after the bids come in. There is some amount of flexibility right now with this. I'm asking you to approve. I do have a little bit of contingency so that if we go a little farther into maybe another presentation, we can handle that. If it gets beyond that, we have to kind of come back to the table.
And I just want to clarify, I'm not asking to go corner by corner on where bike racks and trash cans are located. I have no interest in that. I trust the experts to tell us where a trash can and a bike rack should be located, and I trust them to put it on the right surface that is not the grass that the bike rack, or what used to be grass in front of Lynch's. So all I would ask is that we take this opportunity on page 69 of this book You have some surfboards, you have some squiggly things. You've got a lot of opportunities. There are manufacturers making bike racks that look interesting, that are aluminum, powder coated, can withstand the elements here. So all I'm asking is that we take that opportunity, especially after our strategic planning. How cute would some little shark fin bike racks look dotting through our downtown? They would just go right along with it. So that's what I'm asking. The CRA, they need a win. They need an opportunity to be creative and make a positive impact on our downtown. And I think this is, not only can we have attractive and interesting, but also functional, or we can go the other direction. Maybe we say, okay, we're going to do all ring bike racks just for the mass amount of bike racks we need, but we're going to have 4 spots where we do some special bike racks and we get the UNF sculpture people out here to do it. I don't know what that is, but we have an opportunity to do something unique and interesting, and if we miss this, I'm going to be very upset.
I understand. And
Thank you.
The feedback I got from the design team, the design consultant, was that we were not locked into those specific design or specific specifications of the items, the specific objects or features. So I think there's certainly flexibility for that. If we get to a point where there are so many changes that it starts to change a complete kind of style, that may be something where we have to put the brakes on and revisit it. If it's something that's just changing this particular type of bike rack or that particular type of planter, and it still works with the overall style, I think that was the original intent of the plan. I'm sure that Dix Height is fully receptive to doing that as part of this process to get it ready for bid and implementation.
So am I communicating that? Are you the person I need to communicate this to?
I will certainly be taking that to Mr. Gilmore, that's
Okay.
now on Ms. Ireland, and we will make sure that gets communicated. And we'll find that process. We don't have that plan. Once we are able to move forward with Dix Height and have our first kickoff meeting, then we will really be able to communicate the importance of revisiting these and making sure that they're aware of that and that they are factoring that into this process.
And I just also wanted to note, thank you for picking this up and running with it, because this book is dated 6/6/2017. So it's been a minute. So I appreciate you taking this on. I know you inherited this project, so thank you so much for thoroughly answering my questions. Ms. Golden?
Thank you, Mayor. In follow-up to your comments, I just wanted to mention that Ms. Pavlovsky, who's the vice chair for the CRA, contacted me today because when she saw the memo, she was a little concerned because it mentioned the approved plans, and she felt that the plans were not ready to go yet. And she said the expectation was that the next meeting that there would be discussion about the plans and a little more, get into more detail. So she assured me that she's going to be watching the meeting tonight, so I'm sure she's hearing what you're saying, and I support what you're saying as well. I definitely would like to see us have some creativity in the bike racks, so I support that.
Thank you, Ms. Golden. Mr. Mesa?
Mary took the words out of my mouth. I was gonna ask you questions about the bike racks, but the other question I have about the benches, I didn't get a chance to see if there were any designs or what we're going to be using. Do you have any idea?
I do. I was not involved with the development of this, but I've looked through the site furnishings, and one item that's in there is a raised tier area where they usually put the temporary benches in front of, at Latham Plaza on the south side. So they're looking to actually construct something there that would be some seating. And the other benches that I've seen on there are essentially kind of concrete planter trims or objects that go around planter areas that allow some seating. So we will find an opportunity to get some of this information out through the CRA. We at Public Works, we usually work on a lot of underground infrastructure, but that it's not lost on us that we don't want to construct something, especially above ground, that is not acceptable and that people aren't happy with once it's done.
And then one last thing, I know I saw there was going to be a fix-it station?
There are, I think, 2 or 3, I can't remember.
Do you know the lifespan of those, especially on the beach? Do they,
We have an avid trail cyclist that works with us, and his experience with those is that they are difficult to keep maintained. So we are looking at that, and that's one thing we will certainly revisit with the consultant with Dick's Height and make sure that we are looking to spec something that has, a good track record, so to speak, on that. They already had spec'd out materials like the stainless steel that were, good for this harsh environment. But beyond the stainless steel, there are certain moving parts and components to that. We will do our best with that.
thank you.
And again, we've been working on this for so long. I'd love to see a win and get this accomplished, but I do not feel like we need to rush it through and that we can really take the opportunity to do something creative. I don't see any other lights. Last call, Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Councilmembers Golding,
Yes?
Jansen,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Demott,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, can you read Resolution 2074-2021? I'm sorry. I was going to go, sorry, staff. Comment first?
Just a very brief presentation. Resolution number 2074 is effectively a resolution that opposes Florida Senate Bill 522 and House Bill 219. Those are 2 pieces of matching legislation in both the House and Senate that would basically preempt regulation of short-term vacation rentals by local jurisdictions that did not have an ordinance in place prior to 2011. And I believe the city attorney has prepared this resolution based on our neighbors to the north as a template. And Florida League of Cities.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
A resolution of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, opposing Florida's Senate Bill 522 and House Bill 219, which would preempt regulation of short-term rentals to the state, providing for adoption of recitals, repeal prior inconsistent resolutions, and council decisions, severability, and an effective date.
Thank you. Can we get a motion?
I move that we adopt resolution number 2074-2021, opposing short-term rental, Senate Bill 522 and House Bill 219.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Ms. Golding?
I just want to thank our city attorney, Chris Ambrosio, for getting on this so quickly and doing such a great job with it. And I hope that everybody will support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Golding. And once it's passed, is this something we could share on social media and maybe share throughout, so our constituency that we're at least taking some symbolic action on that, Ms. Golding?
And Mayor?
Yeah, I'm sorry sorry, I meant to follow up on that as well. Yeah, are we able, I guess, given whatever we're allowed to do, I will be reaching out to legislators, and so will I be able to share this resolution with those legislators and the committees and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. Once approved and signed, you can share it with anyone. And Section 3 of the resolution, I included that the City Council directs the clerk to transmit a copy of the signed resolution to the Florida Governor, City of Jacksonville, Florida League of Cities, and the Duval County delegation. So under your direction to the City Clerk, it will be published to those organizations or individuals. And then, of course, once it's signed, you can also present it or publish it in any way that you'd like once the City Council has approved it. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
Can we also share it with Beach's Leader, and then also can we share it on the city Facebook site? The verbiage or brief explanation, just brief it down a little bit so we can share it that way, and we can advise our residents that they should contact their representatives in Tallahassee to discuss it.
Absolutely. Under your direction through Mike, the manager will handle that.
Mr. Stokes?
A second, I was going to make a comment on putting it on Facebook so that we could all share it. I think this is very important in us keeping our home rule and making sure that we don't let Tallahassee govern us too tight, and make sure that we can keep our home rule open and make decisions that benefit our city, and not let the state legislature put something on us that would harm our ability to govern these locally.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes. No other comments? Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Councilmembers Jansen,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Demott,
Yes.
Golding,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes, motion carries. Staff report on ordinance 037, or item 037?
Thank you, Mayor. This item is consideration of an interlocal agreement that would effectively reduce the tax increment finance collection for the South End CRA. The City Council did hold a joint meeting with the CRA last Wednesday, February 24th. And while there was a lot of conversation regarding the South End TIF, that conversation does not substitute for a vote with regards to the actual reduction thereof. So staff has this in front of you tonight to either approve or deny at your discretion. One clarification that I would like to put forward: there have been a lot of questions as to when the conversation about reducing the South End TIF was publicized, so to speak. And our CFO went back and checked the records and found that the budget showcase in 2017, in preparation of the 2018 budget, was the first time that reduction of the South End TIF collection was referenced publicly. And since then, it has been referenced in every budget from 18, 19, 20, and 21. But with that being said, I'm here for any questions that you might have, and I would just look for a formal and final direction on this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salvados. Madam Clerk, will you read the ordinance by title?
An ordinance of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, providing for reduction of Community Redevelopment Agency tax increment financing, or TIF, for the South End Community Redevelopment Area pursuant to Section 163.387(1) Florida statutes, authorizing an interlocal agreement with the City of Jacksonville, Duval County, for mutual agreement of the TIF reduction by both taxing authorities pursuant to Section 163.387(3)B Florida statutes, providing directions to the city clerk, providing for legislative findings, repeal conflicts, severability, and an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This ordinance is before the council for a public hearing and consideration on its first reading. I will now open the public hearing on ordinance number 2020-8143. Public hearing is open. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the ordinance? Do we have anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the ordinance? The public hearing is closed. Can I get a motion to adopt the ordinance?
I move that we approve ordinance number 2020-8143 on its first reading, authorizing the execution and adoption of the interlocal agreement between the cities of Jacksonville and Jacksonville Beach to reduce the amount of tax increment funds, TIF, collected and distributed annually to the South End Community Redevelopment District from the current amount of 95% of the TIF collected to 50%.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Discussion, Ms. Dumont.
Thank you. We had a very robust discussion about this with the CRA on February 24th. And that discussion has one of the main things that came out of that is that we don't really have a plan. We have capital improvement projects 5 years out, but there is no one set plan that one can point to as to what we want the South End to look like. It's come a long way. I will not, there's no denying that. But this is the opportunity for us to just make sure that we have what we're going to need down there before we reduce the amount of funding we're going to keep. Because without having a plan of what we want, we know totally what we want to do. We can't know how much that's going to cost and how much we can reduce the TIF in the future to be able to meet those needs. So I am making a motion to postpone indefinitely for 12 months. It gives the CRA 12 months to get on this. because this does impact the general fund. So to postpone for 12 months and for us to look at it again to reassess the 50% or if it needs to be higher than that or what.
Second.
We have a motion and second amendment to the ordinance to postpone it for 12 months. Is there any discussion on the postpone definitely motion? Chet?
Yeah, just so we're clear on the 12-month thing, just would like to hear from city manager, and I guess we have Ashley here from budgeting on how that's going to affect this year's budget and possibly looking forward to next year's budget. Because I know that we have the additional $750,000 that we're already counting on in the budget, and so, you know, where are we going to adjust to not increase millage, those kind of things in this 12-month period? We'd just like to get a quick report before we put this to a vote.
If we were to delay this for a 12-month window, the issue of funds coming into the general fund would only be an impact if there was not spillage from this upcoming year. We have had spillage the last 2 years, and we are projecting that we will have spillage again for a third year in a row. So the probability of there being a fiscal impact is probably lower than it would be in future years. So again, our intent at looking at this has always been based on outstanding capital projects that were identified in 2011, based on what had been achieved in the plan up to that point in time, and the amount of revenue that would be continued to receive by the South End CRA for the next 30 years. Administration's recommendation is still dropping to 50%. We feel that that's more than enough revenue to pay for capital projects that are currently in the queue, as well as new projects that may be conceived. However, we understand that council and the CRA may want to go through an exercise of evaluating future capital projects before that decision is made.
So to follow up, we had a long discussion on the spillage and possible accounting issues that could impose if we get audited, those kind of things. Would we run the risk this year? Would there be a high risk of that happening? Because this would be third year in a row of spillage. So just want to follow up with that.
Yeah, I think one of the concerns is that obviously our own auditors who look at our records will say, why are you continuing to spill funds, very large dollar amounts, in a TIF district? If the projects aren't there, why are you continuing to collect it? The second is not necessarily our auditors, but the auditor for the city of Jacksonville, who's also watching and seeing the funds get returned on an annual basis for what will now be the third year in a row. It's not a surprise to anybody up on council who's tracked local politics that there is always legislation that is proposed that's based on individual issues or topics. I would not want to see individual legislation get proposed related to CRA specifically because of the issues that we're experiencing. And I'm not saying it would happen, but it's always in the back of your mind that something could happen. A couple of years ago, we had an issue where an individual legislator from Sarasota area had a bad experience with tree permits and filed legislation to basically remove all local control over tree removal permitting. And now we have new standards in place at the local level that restrict us and bind our hands with regards to certain issues of tree removal. So it's just something to be cautious of as we move forward.
Last follow-up, this is probably more directed to Mr. Ambrosio. Is there any sort of agreement document that we can work out stating our intention to review after 12 months, so that way we don't get ourselves in a legal bind of this year?
So right now, Mr. Stokes, the current status of the communications between myself and the attorney from the City of Jacksonville General Counsel Office who's handling it from their end, the latest is that the version of the ordinance and ILA that the council has before them tonight, that was what we worked out and agreed to on a legal department basis that we would present to our council. We have not had any discussions about postponement, delays, further extensions, 12-month extensions. So I literally have an email partly crafted to fill in the blanks based on what your votes and decisions are tonight. So we have not had any discussions about a postponement. He's waiting, on behalf of his clients, he's waiting to see what your votes are for the current documents before you tonight. But otherwise, we haven't planned for any other materials to be drafted or any other agreements.
And to further answer that question, Councilor Stokes, if this were not to pass tonight and the council were to take motion to delay it for a date certain, regardless of what happens, I would be contacting Brian Hughes at City of Jacksonville and probably Joey Bradley, their CFO, and explaining to them what the action of council was tonight.
Mr. Nichols?
The spillage from, what was the spillage from last year and what is the anticipated spillage for this year? And the follow-up to that question is, of that spillage, does the City of Jacksonville need to get any of that back? So are we still getting the percentage back of the spillage into the general fund or not?
Ashley Gossett, CFO. To answer your question, last year our spillage was about $2.5 million that we returned to the taxing authorities. And of that $2.5 million, $750,000 was returned to the general fund because the City of Jacksonville Beach is one of the taxing authorities. And so we anticipate the same amount for 2021. Sorry, we anticipate the same amount for the 2021 fiscal year.
Thank you.
Ms. Dumont?
Thank you. I think the concerns of raising eyes and such is the reason why I postponed instead of just a flat out no. A no just kind of means no. And this way we are going to be looking at this again in 12 months with the CRA's feedback as to all of the things that they are going to want to do in that area for the rest of the time for the TIF, that we can make the best financial decision as to how much we need to reduce it by. It might go down to 50%, but we just don't know at the moment.
If I can jump in real quick, Ms. Golding, I listened during the joint meeting. I didn't speak up on this issue, but the thing that I heard very consistently was, we might be fine with 50%, we just don't know. So I really like the method of this, where you basically just start the shot clock. So we have a year, and it's going to come back up in a year, whether we're ready or not, and hopefully, if this amendment passes. Ms. Golding?
I just want to concur that I definitely agree, and I would like to give the CRA that time to come up with a plan, and so we know exactly what is needed and what's not needed, and then we can adjust. And so I do appreciate the delay as well. And I also appreciate that we had the joint meeting, because it was a very, very good meeting with a lot of good discussion and a lot of good information, so that I think I was glad to hear that personally, because I represent a district that is not as well-funded or well-maintained as the South District, that this doesn't mean that my district will be impacted. So I'm willing to give the CRA the time to do what they need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Golding. Mr. Jansen?
Basically, some of the same information. I left out of that meeting having more questions than when I went into it. At the end of it, I feel like there's information to be had, especially as a newer counselor, that I would like to review and go through and have a good understanding. I have read some of the documents that have been provided thus far, but I also agree with Councilor Dumont that we should take our time and take a good look at this, seeing as we're relatively new in the council. That's it.
I don't see any other lights. The amendment is to postpone definitely for 12 months. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Meza,
Yes.
Nichols,
No.
Stokes,
Yes.
Dumont,
Yes.
Golding,
Yes?
Jansen,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes. Motion to postpone definitely carries. Moving on to item number 038. Do we have a staff update?
Thank you, Mayor. So this final item is a ordinance that I have had on the cutting room for, and it's one that I've been wanting to implement with your approval to provide the city with a few extra protections and defenses that other cities that I've worked with have in place and other counties have in place and that we are entitled to have, and I recommend to my clients that we have them. So Florida Statute 76828 is essentially the sovereign immunity or tort waiver statute in which claimants bring basically tort actions against the city. There are conditions precedent that a claimant must follow pursuant to that statute in order to effectuate a lawsuit against us. The statute has an empty space, so to speak, where it does not prescribe exactly how to provide us with a claimant's notice. It has required elements of that notice, but it doesn't provide the instructions on how the claimant provides us that notice. So along the lines of one of the other directives essentially that I've given to our departments is, and as you well know, that when a summons is served to the city, they can't just drop it off. This process server can't just drop off the notice at any random department. They have to follow Florida law. And by following Florida law, they typically are finding you, Mayor, to serve you on behalf of the city.
Or I'm finding them.
Or you're finding them, that's right. You made it easy for one guy. So 76828, the opportunity for us to define and prescribe and codify the delivery of the notice of claim is what this is, part one of what this ordinance does. And it enables myself and the manager and essentially our first line of defense that a claimant must perfect the method of delivery of notice to us. And City of Jacksonville has one, and I highly recommend we have it as well. I need it to help defend the city in our 768 lawsuits. The second element to this ordinance is essentially another empty space where cities are able to create their own false claims ordinance. There's the Federal False Claims Act and the Florida False Claims Act, both which the federal government and in Florida, the Florida state agencies can utilize to help fight against and protect themselves, the government agency, against false or fraudulent or inflated claims. The federal government and the state utilize it mostly for in two ways: contractors that make false claims, fraudulent claims, or inflated claims. Examples of that are contractors that maybe make a bid to a governmental agency for, for example, $1 million, and then when the final invoices are brought forward to the state, that $1 million job turns into a $1.4 million job. And they will develop false information or supplement their invoices with misleading information or untruthful information. And then on the lower end, there are cases where claimants, again, who want to sue the city, they become plaintiffs and they sue the city, and they make demands, for example, for injuries that they did not sustain as a result of any wrongdoing on behalf of the city. So I've had many cases where a plaintiff has pre-existing injuries or actually sustained the injury at a different location that the city did not own, operate, or control. No city employee was negligent in causing the injuries, and these plaintiffs have submitted medical records claiming that the city is responsible for all the physical injuries and the medical costs and damages. And Florida League of Cities does not like those people very much because they're committing essentially a fraud against the municipality. And then a lower level, which we hope we never would encounter, but even I've had cases where employees have submitted false information to obtain a higher, say, reimbursement for travel expenses, and there's a little provision I included in there for something like that. So to the far end, contractors that are trying to commit fraud and have the city overpay them for work or services that they did not provide us with, give us false or misleading information, fraudulent claim in terms of claimants that are trying to bring actions against the city, and then if any city employee submits any false or misleading information. So there's this is another level of protection. So this is one of my protection codes, ordinances that I'd like to get in place. I've reviewed this with AJ from Finance and then Lewis from Procurement and Purchasing to make sure that we're all on the same page. They had huge smiles and they definitely said for me to convey that they like this. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambrosio. City Clerk, will you read the ordinance by title?
An ordinance of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, amending the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 16, Article 1, by creating sections to set forth the requirements and conditions proceeding for effecting service of notice of claims on the city in connection with Florida Statute Section 768.28 and establishing a false claims code similar to the Florida False Claims Act, providing to state agencies, providing for legislative findings, repeal conflicting ordinances, severability, codification, and an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This ordinance is before the council for a public hearing and consideration on its first reading. I will now open the public hearing on ordinance number 2021-8161. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of the ordinance? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the ordinance? The public hearing is now closed. May I get a motion?
I move we approve ordinance number 2021-8161 on the first reading and schedule a second reading for March 15th, 2021.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions from the council? Ms. Golding?
Just a quick question. On page 5 of 7, there's mention that contractors and service providers may be subject to debarment from city contracting for a period not to exceed 5 years. So who determines that time frame that they would be debarred from contracts?
I would speak to the manager about it, and then we'd likely bring it to council to discuss the results of what we found and make some recommendations and suggestions to the council and have council give us direction on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I do not see any other questions from council. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Nichols,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Demott,
Yes.
Golding,
Yes.
Jansen,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes, motion carries. Anything else, City Manager? You all good? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Have a great night.